Shawn. It's 8 o'clock, and we have a good group of people joining us here tonight, and thank you so much for that. I'm Michael. I'm part of the BuildWithPros team, and Shawn Ray and I am very happy to have you here together with us tonight, and we're very excited to tell you more about Shawn's Muscle Mastery course, which will take place in the beginning. It will start in the beginning of January 24. The purpose with this intro is really to give you an idea about the objective of the course and what you can expect from joining it, and how that actually can empower you on your journey within fitness and bodybuilding. So, Shawn, maybe a couple of words from you.
Yeah, well, listen, this is a journey. It's a retrospective look at 40 years of commitment to excellence. I mean, I started at 17 years old lifting weights. I had aspirations of being a good teenage bodybuilder that turned into a career from the birth of my passion. So many aspects of bodybuilding besides training and competing, I fell in love with. And the creative aspect of it has led me into being a promoter, marketer, a branding agent, a sponsor of events, supporter of the sport, a consultant for the Olympia, and working with one of my heroes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and of course, the late Joe and Ben Weider. That's not something as a teenager you think can actually happen, but it shows you the power of positive thinking. And Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about that the best. Some people will say he's arrogant. Some people say he's full of himself. I have yet to meet a bodybuilder that's successful that's not full of himself, because this is a sport of self-belief. We do the impossible on a regular basis. This is not something where you can just take time off and improve. This is a daily grind, a test of mental fortitude, a test of will, because you're training against the weights, but at the same time, you're training against the competition. You're training for something that you can only visualize, not something that you can see. Take a picture, it's a snapshot of time. But in my mind, I've got to be better than that photograph 6 months to a year from now when I get back on stage. So there's a lot of magic act going on, because you have to believe in the impossible. But then at the same time, just when you think you're there, there's another mountain to climb, and there's more obstacles to overcome. There's more financial hardships in front of you. There's muscle soreness. There's aches and pains, and there's heartache, and there's all these obstacles in your way. But at the finish line, it's really designed and made for the people that have a strong mental fortitude. You see people fall away, and not everybody will get to the finish line. And that's why I think bodybuilding Hall of Famers, Mr. Olympia, they're so revered, because anyone that's tried to go down that path knows how hard, how high, how steep that peak is, how winding the roads are, how long it's going to take. And so people fall by the wayside. And we have great respect for the people that make it to the top, that finish the race, that do it over and over and over and over and over again, that we revere that, because we know how hard this journey is. And so with a breadth of 40 years behind me of struggles, ups and downs, peaks and valleys, the one thing that remains clear in my repertoire of successes is that I've been very consistent. And that consistency comes from a mindset that's different than the rest. Yeah, I was born with a certain amount of genetics, but that's to say, the guy that's a multimillionaire was born with a silver spoon in his house because his father gave him the inheritance. But to whom much is given, much is required. I might have had a good start, but I had to make these genetics work. I had to recognize my genetic potential. Then I had to feed the machine. And then I had to, in the face of giants in bodybuilding, I had to believe that I could stand next to them. And so I found my way through this journey. And the Muscle Mastery course is designed to extract some information that I probably haven't shared, that goes a little bit deeper than a magazine article, that goes a little bit deeper than a 1-hour podcast, a journey to the gym for a 45-minute workout. This is an opportunity for people to extract the information that I've learned over those 40 years and then actually apply it with real time. They can communicate and interact. I can guide them. I can coach them in in the sense that I'm not blindly telling you do this and this will work for you. I'm going to show you what I did because I know it worked for me. And I'm not a unicorn, but I'm one of the few that was able to do it over and over and over and over again to the point where I know how I got there. So that's why I wanted to do this with you, Michael, because I think there are ways to get information that I've forgotten out of my long-term memory that will apply to today and in real time that can help maybe the next guy on their journey to becoming Mr. Olympian. Remember, I didn't have this kind of communication coming up. When I came up, I had to read the magazines. And then I had to take action. I had to drive to different gyms to meet different bodybuilders. I had to work my way through the ranks to get to a point where I could meet Joe Weider, establish a working relationship with him, grow up in the industry with Jim Mannion, and meet Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then become a competitor with the world's best, and then to retire and still be able to retain these types of relationships to where they benefit me now and to where I can share them with people coming up behind me. So this Build with Pros things is much more than just a podcast. It's much more than just a lecture. This is where people get a chance to go a little bit deeper, get a little bit closer, and then get the real education from someone that actually walked the walk and lived it.
Yeah, you have a good point there. I think it's interesting to see today. I think a lot of the training is based more or less just on information that people get, and not really knowledge, not the real knowledge, but just they see maybe a famous bodybuilder do something on Instagram, or and then they think, oh, I'll do the same thing, and they really don't know anything about what's going on and what's happening, and and then so much of it is just based on information and not knowledge today. I think that is the big difference compared to, because everybody's looking back and at the golden era. It's they're saying that was the best time. You want to be a part of it. When you look at that, and there must be a reason for that.
Well, I mean, when you look at the golden era, which I would consider somewhere in the 90s, a little bit of the early 2000s, maybe the late 80s, but that golden era that we're talking about, literally all those guys are Hall of Fame bodybuilders. And it's because we were pushing each other. We knew each other. We trained with each other. We traveled with each other. And there was no instant FaceTime, Zoom, Instagram, InstaFamous. We didn't take phones into the gym with us. Like, we took attitude, right? We didn't go into the gym with our coach watching us working out from another country. We went in there and had to go through the actual blows of training with another bodybuilder. You didn't know how strong he was. You didn't know if it's his strong day, if it's rep day, but we went in there for battle. And so those Hall of Fame bodybuilders laid the foundation, and it was nice for me to live that experience. And it's also educational for me to see what's happening today, so we can try to correct some of these guys coming up and get them back on track. And the only way to get back on track is to talk to people like myself that actually was there. I was there. So I'm going to take you back in that time machine to guide you along that way, to get you back on the right path, and to remind you that while this telephone is an information piece, this is not going to make you bigger, faster, or stronger. Exactly. You have to put it down, and you got to get in the game, and you got to do the work. Yeah. So I want to try to remind people of that aspect as well.
Great. Should we try to just walk through maybe, the course content? So I'll just share my screen here. So here we go. And maybe just, I'm pretty sure everybody know who you are, Shawn, but, walk us through and maybe also give us a kind of, an idea about, because you didn't start out with bodybuilding, right? You were in football. You're really good at that. And so tell us a bit about that.
Well, I started out as a football player because I wanted to be the best at my high school. And I think those ambitions coming up from a young kid pre-high school helped lay the foundation for what I was going to become later on as a bodybuilder. When the football thing didn't work out because I injured my knee, I went into the gym to get bigger, faster, and stronger with hopes of coming back to play football. But along the way, I met a bodybuilder, introduced me to lifting weights, introduced me to competition. I jumped in my first show when I was second place, and a week later, I had won the teenage the California Gold Cup. When I won the California Gold Cup, I mean, there's nothing like the feeling of like beating total strangers and feeling 100% responsible for that success, I wanted to feel it again. And so then I went into the teenage Los Angeles, and I went to the next level, the teenage California. And then I was preparing for the teen nationals, and there was a show in my backyard, the teenage Orange County. So I did that and I won there. So I've won all the local county shows in my backyard. And this is bringing together all the people from all the gyms that saw me bouncing around to all the different gyms. So I'm getting this entourage of support. And now I'm going to leave California and get on an airplane and fly across the country to Atlanta, Georgia for the teenage national championships, which I won the light heavy and the overall. And that would set me up for the opportunity to leave the country and represent America in Australia. And in 1985, I flew to Australia out of the country for my very first time. I was 20 years old. I won the junior world title and came home. And I thought, all right, this is something that I can do. I'm going to go to the junior national championships. This is a show that Lee Haney had won. And Lee Haney was a teenage national champion, junior national champion, a national champion, and Mr. Universe. So I was following in what Lee Haney was doing. So I wanted to win the junior national championships. And I ran into a pit bull by the name of Eddie Robinson, who would beat me in my light heavyweight class, but he would go on to win the overall of the competition in 1986. Now that was a taste of defeat that was pretty bitter for me, but it drove me for the next year to say, I'm going to move up to the men's level. I'm no longer a 20-year-old bodybuilder. I'm going to go in the open class and compete against everybody. So I chose to do the Mr. California Championships right here, which I had already won the teenage championships 3 years prior, and I won the light heavyweight in the overall. So I joined the company of a Bob Paris and a Mike Christian and Leroy Liedlmeyer. So that put me in front of the line going into the national championships later on in the year. I had 5 months to get better. And in that 5 months, I did everything I could do. I was manipulating my calories. I was playing with my protein. I was training as hard as I could. And on my first try, I went in and I won the national championships in the light heavyweight and the overall. And that put me on the map because I won the coveted pro card, which now I could compete for prize money in 1987. I legitimized my position as a bodybuilder. I got a contract with Joe Weider. I was on all the magazines. I was living the life that I had always dreamed of since 1983 as a 17-year-old. I'd arrived. And in 1988, I would do my very first Mr. Olympia contest, which I'll get to. But that set the tone for me to go on and be, say that I'm a professional bodybuilder. I won the Ironman in 1990, only 30 minutes from my house. I went to the first ever drug test at Arnold Classic show and won. And then I turned around and I failed the drug test. I thought my career was over. And, in talking with Arnold and talking with Joe Weider, my career wasn't over. I'd stumbled. I hit a roadblock. It was a bump in the road. I was physically fine. And so you know what I did? I decided to go back. And I went back to the Arnold Classic in 1991, and I won the title, and I kept the prize money, I kept the trophy, cemented my position in bodybuilding. And then from there, I set my sights on trying to become Mr. Olympia. It was a huge run for me from 1983 to 1991 to not only look back at that time period and have that validation that I, number one, chose the right sport. Number two, I did all the right things. And number three, when I was challenged with the face of adversity, failing a drug test, losing the prize money, that I could get up off the canvas, get back in the arena and redeem myself, and then launch my career to do Mr. Olympia for the next decade.
And exactly to that is one of the cores really is about is mental resilience, right? And mindset, how to get back after these. So we take.
Yeah. So yeah. All that stuff was just a precursor to what my Olympia run looked like, because I remember I started bodybuilding and I wanted to become Mr. Olympia. That was the goal. So you always have to have a goal that's probably unrealistic, but nonetheless, it's a goal that as you get closer to it, it becomes more real. It becomes more believable. And through the grace of God and good health, it almost became achievable. So my first Olympia was in 1988. I landed in the middle of the pack of 26 bodybuilders, which was a good showing for my first time, considering I was all over the world during that time. I didn't have time to train properly. But I came back in that drug-tested year that I'd failed the Arnold Classic. And they drug-tested the 1990 Mr. Olympia. And in that same calendar year, only 7 months later, I would go from 13th place to 3rd place at the drug-tested Mr. Olympia in Chicago, cementing my predictions, I guess solidifying the hopes and the beliefs that other people had in myself, that I was among the top in the world and I could actually do this. So getting third in 1990 was very redeeming for my career, and it literally set me on fire to say, you know what? I'm going to try to focus on becoming Mr. Olympia. And so I went on to compete in 11 consecutive Olympias after that. And of course, I vacillated between third, fourth, fifth, second a couple of times. And I stayed in that top 5 for 13 years of my pro career, which became a record still to this day. And I look back over that time period and I thought, how did that happen? That doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by gift. People weren't favoring me because of politics. I had ruffled a lot of feathers. I was fighting against the system for more prize money. I was fighting against the system for more better judges and accountability. So to be able to stay in that top 5 meant something, because I didn't have a lot of friends on the judging panel. And I knew that along the way that my career would have a shelf life. And I didn't want to try to figure it all out when I was 40 plus. So along the way, I began writing. I became a master of ceremonies. I became a consultant. I became an ambassador to many different businesses out there. And I became a global ambassador for the sport of bodybuilding. I remember Ben Weider once said that he was an ambassador for bodybuilding. He was a person that wanted to plant seeds in different places so that people could grow up underneath the shade of the tree that he planted. And so for me, it resonated with me. I wanted to go all over the world. I wanted to be an ambassador. I wanted to be a missionary. And through my consistency in the Olympia stage, without a victory, I was able to continue to thrive in the sport of bodybuilding, become a missionary for bodybuilding, sharing the gospel. And bodybuilding for me, looking back, has served a purpose and a calling for my life that not only kept me on the straight and narrow, it's kept the roof over my head, it's kept me healthy, and it's also given me a platform to share what I've learned so the people coming up behind me can try to replicate it and be better than that.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. Should we try to just, get into what's about the muscle mastery course, and just
Well,
kind of
again,
just
yeah,
touch on it?
well, we got the bullet points for a reason, because a lot of us just go into the gym, and I was guilty, but I was led by a professional to see where it will take us. But if you can go in there with some goal setting, if you can go in there with a little bit of instruction, it certainly makes the road a lot more straight. Instead of trying to figure it out, it's a lot more winding. So you got to kind of know what it is that you want to try to do and how you're going to get there. It's like a house. You might know that you want a roof over your head and maybe a pool in the backyard, but you got to have blueprints, and you got to make sure it's built on the right foundation. So it takes a thinking mind to build a world-class physique. And so what I want to try to do is give you some guidance on how to build muscle for success. I want to give you the power of setting clear goals by telling you how I did it. I'm not going to make anything up to make it sugar-coated. I'm going to tell you how I did it. You also have to have certain objectives. Not everybody's trying to be Mr. Olympia, but the application of having the power of positive thinking applies to me in business today. I don't train every day. I exercise. So my goals have changed. My fitness regime has changed. I'm not in there trying to do battle with the world's best. I'm just trying to maintain a level of fitness so I can be there for my grandchildren, so I can continue traveling the world, so I can put my shoes on. We also got to make sure that the goals that you set for building muscle are realistic, because not everybody can be a bodybuilder. Anybody can lift weights, but not everybody can be a bodybuilder. So we got to be realistic. If you're 6'7", this is a tough sport to actually become like one of the world's best. I'm not saying it's impossible, but we just don't see it that often. So it's tough. If you're 5'2", you might have some success, but it hasn't been achieved. But we have some short bodybuilders, just not that short. And then, of course, at the end, I want to be able to have that live Q&A. I want to answer very specific questions. I want to tell you a little bit more about the encounters I've had and some of the reasons I have the power of positivity, which keeps me engaged with you guys to this day.
Yes. Session 2 is about nutrition.
Yes. And anybody, there's a lot of confusion when it comes to nutrition, the same way there is when it comes down to what exercise I should do. You walk into a gym, it can be overwhelming because you see all of the gym equipment. You might be familiar with some of them, but there's so many where do you start? Well, it's the same way as walking into a grocery store. Where do you start? I mean, do you eat the foods that taste good, or do you eat the food that looks good, or how do you group them? So I'm going to try to tell you how I grouped foods. I'm going to tell you the role of the nutrition, how it played a part in my life, a little bit of the differences between the proteins, carbs, and fats. Listen, some of that might be very elementary, but I guarantee you there's very few of you that have done it on the level that I had to do it. And there's some mixing and matching that may sound very foreign to you, but yet very beneficial. So it's always good to get as much knowledge as you can, let what sinks in stay with you, and then kind of move on from the part that doesn't. Because what I eat is different than what Dorian ate and what Flex ate, but we found a way to get there. And I guarantee you, our grocery bills probably look the same. Just how we prepare our foods might be a little bit different. The importance of supplements. Supplements are not drugs, okay? But when you train twice a day, when you drink 2 gallons of water, when you're out in the sun, when you sweat, you got to have the right kind of balance for your nutrition, because there's cramping involved, there's dehydration that's involved. These supplements come in handy because you can only eat so much food, and not everything's going to have enough vitamin B, D, E, amino acids. So supplements are a very good, vital role. You just have to kind of know which ones are good and which ones are kind of a waste of money. And we'll get to that. Crafting a meal plan. Sometimes I'm eating dinner for breakfast and I'm eating breakfast for dinner. I drove my mom nuts when I was a teenage bodybuilder because she couldn't understand why she was waking up to the smell of fish in the morning. But as a bodybuilder, sometimes you got to get creative because we're eating the same stuff all over and over and over. I just can't eat eggs every time I wake up in the morning for 20 years of my life. So I'll tell you how to kind of do your meal plans. There are some myths that I want to debunk. There's some misconceptions about foods and what they actually do. So I'll get into that. And of course, at the end of all that, we'll have the Q&A where you can ask me some questions and engage. I'm not professing that my way is the only way, but it worked for me. There's a reason why I was able to beat everybody in bodybuilding except Dorian and Ronnie, and I competed against the world's best. So I'm not sitting up here espousing to know everything, but what I know works for me, I know is not only going to work for me, which is why we're here. I want to give it to you so you can apply it.
Great.
Yes. All right. So we get to the workout and the principles and the programs. Do you train 3 days on, 1 day off? Do you train 6 days in a row? Do you do like Mike Mincer and Dorian Yates and just train twice a week? I mean, it's so confusing as to what the right way is and the wrong way is. I can basically tell you the Shawn Ray way, and I've tried all of them. So there's certain fundamentals that you have to do to build muscle in your workouts. You can't just go in there and lift weights. If I pick up a basketball, I'm playing basketball. But am I really doing what Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal do? There's a big difference in playing basketball and being a pro. There's a big difference in lifting weights and trying to become Mr. Olympia. So I got to, guide you through some of the fundamentals so you're not wasting your time. And you need some guidance on the proper techniques. I never got to a point where I knew it all because I trained with some of the world's best in a very diverse group of guys. And when it came down to actually doing and executing a certain exercise, we're all kind of different. The same way it comes down to like how we like our chicken, how we want to make our eggs, and how much weight we want to put on. But we're all different. So I'm going to share with you some of the techniques that are a little bit different. The art of progressive overload. This is a situation where you're going to feel strong as an ox on certain days. The power of common sense is going to tell you whether or not you should add that extra weight. I remember Ronnie Coleman said, squatting 800 pounds or whatever it was, that does he have any regrets? And he said one of his regrets was he thought he had another 3 or 5 more sets, 5 more reps. However, what makes you can break you. Just because you have a car that goes 200 miles an hour doesn't necessarily mean you want to drive 200 miles an hour. Just because you feel strong as an ox today doesn't mean that you should put that extra weight on there, which could lead to a career-ending injury. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the art of progressive overload because there are some landmines in there. And you just can't do what you always want to do just because you think you should. You got to exercise caution. And then there's personalized workout routines. They're all going to be different for what you want to do. You're 40 years old. You're going to be doing something different than a 20-year-old. You're getting ready for a bodybuilding show as opposed to getting ready for your New Year's resolution. It's going to be different. The mindset's going to be different. So we're going to talk a little bit about personalized workout routines down the road. And of course, I'll be answering questions after that session is over with.
Yeah, great, Shawn.
But there's a lot more that goes into it than, again,
Yeah.
buying a gym membership and then going in the gym and just thinking that lifting weights is going to take you to the promised land. We're going to talk about targeting muscle groups because, again, I always thought, even when I first started bodybuilding, what I was looking at on the African-American bodybuilder, that we're genetically inferior when it comes to calf development. Like, we just don't, we're coming from behind. I just didn't have a lot of influences of people that had great calves. Chris Dickerson was one. But after I saw Chris Dickerson, I was hard-pressed to find great calves on an African-American bodybuilder. And is that even possible? Maybe it's a genetic difference. It's not. So what I decided to do from the get-go was, when I went in the gym, I started with my calves. Literally every one of my workouts, I would start with my calf workouts. So talking about grouping muscles and working on the weak body parts, targeting, that's going to be an area that I address in there. And there's reasons why. Because, again, you have the bicep and the tricep. Some people have superior biceps. What do we do about the tricep? Well, we're going to get to that in terms of the muscle grouping. And then hitting the right exercises from different angles. There's a million different exercises that I've done. There's a whole lot of different angles. But again, the mind, the muscle connection, that's a very important part of the precision targeting. And when it comes down to form, that's one of the things that I've been praised for. I've gotten a lot of, and it's funny because I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it as a bodybuilder in the throes of my career, was the execution of my exercises. And a lot of it's on video. People talked about my form ad nauseum, that it was perfect. Like, it wasn't something I was trying to do. I just love the idea of full range of muscle to get the full maximum development of muscle. So I'll talk a little bit about the form and the muscle-mind connection. Again, I like to use that basketball analogy. Anyone can pick up a basketball, but not everybody can make it to the NBA. And not everybody's playing at that level. You've got to be in tune with what you're doing. From the minute you grab that weight to the minute that you hoist it up over your head, or you pull it into your chest, or you push it away from your body, your mind has to be in tune with the muscle. And that's a huge aspect of the muscle mastery. And I'm going to get into that in great detail, which I haven't really. I've been holding back. And so now I'm excited to start talking about the muscle-mind connection. And then again, the common mistakes and injuries. There's a reason why I was never injured to any degree in my bodybuilding career. And there's a lot of formulas as to why that I'll share with you on how to not only prevent them, but also avoid the mistakes. And then I'll take your questions after that. That's session number 4.
We can see how devastating it can be, right? Walker today,
Nick Walker, 3rd place in the Olympia, Honor Classic champion, a week out from the Mr. Olympia, tears his hamstring, and that's it for him. And he's going to have a very long road to recovery. The hamstring is not an easy muscle to come back from. But, Kevin Levrone tore his pec right after he got 2nd place in the 1992 Mr. Olympia, where I was competing. He debuted there, tore his pec, and he came back to have a Hall of Fame career, to win several Arnold Classic championships, to place 2nd in the Olympia another 3 times after a devastating pec tear. So I'm not going to count Nick Walker out, but nobody wants to get injured. And so I'm going to talk about how you can avoid some of those mistakes. And also,
and it's about being smart about it, right? So, So I think this one is, is something we all discover,
We discover that when we're in the middle of it, right? Like, you're putting in all of this work, you've been doing everything right, and you look in the mirror and you gain 2 pounds, right? You go in the gym and you can't add another 5 pounds because you just hit the wall. And you got to ask yourself, am I at a plateau? I mean, how do I get beyond this? How do I get over it? I think every bodybuilder at some point in time, and you can only imagine for 13 years doing the Olympia, that I was hitting the wall, I was hitting plateaus. But at the same time, I found ways to break through. And a lot of it comes from the mind, but at the same time, it's my body that carried the weight of my career. And you have to find your way to break through. I'm going to talk about some strategic things that I used to do that would help me get over the hump, that would also help me understand that it's just a hump. It's not a mountain. It's a hump. I can get over this thing. I just have to figure out how. And a lot of that takes place up here but the execution of it through my body, through changing my workout times, sometimes changing the gym, sometimes changing what I'm wearing. All of those are strategies that help me. Sometimes training my mind to actually listen to different music. You know, some things that we don't talk out loud about. There's some good strategies that I implemented that helped me get through some of those plateaus and break through. We're going to talk about some of the advanced techniques. Every so often, I'd say every 5 years, there's some advanced technique. But at the end of the day, like when I was coming up, Joe Weider coined everything the Weider principle. You know, like, hey Joe, look at how I'm doing my side laterals. And oh, that's the Joe Weider, you know, instant side lateral. There's a lot of different training techniques, but trying to break through and push yourself to a limit, that's going to come from somebody else, because I can only do so much by myself. I needed an external influence to help me push myself to a different level. I'm that external influence. I'm going to give that to you guys. Tracking progress, making adjustments for continued growth. There's certain validity in that. And at the same time, sometimes there's too much focus on it. It can take you right to where you need to go, or it can take you down this rabbit hole. So we need to know how much of our progress we need to track and how much of our progress we need to just sit back and let it happen. You know, I started out at 17 to try to become Mr. Olympia. When I blinked, I was standing on the Olympia stage. It was 5 years out of high school. I couldn't track that in 5 years of my career. I don't know how I got there, other than the fact that I knew I wanted to be on the Mr. Olympia stage. I don't have a record of it. I can't tell you what I did, other than the discipline of desire to get there. And I woke up one day and I was there. It didn't happen overnight, but tracking your progress sometimes is not the best remedy, because it can hold you in a place where you can't get to the next level. Progressive intensity, steps to evaluate your training. There's some good stuff in there and there's some bad stuff. And I may just throw caution to the wind for some of you guys, because you think you're writing everything down and it's, you know, accountability. I can tell you, I don't have a journal. So, you know, I don't have a journal to look back on. Sometimes evaluating your training by writing things down is not always the best way. Not for me. Preventing burnout, sustaining motivation. That's my specialty. I'll share that with you guys, and I'll take the questions afterward, because again, there's a reason why I was able to do this profession, you know, from 17 to 36 years old, without really taking a year off. There's a reason why I was able to do it. And you got to be able to get through burnout, and you got to be motivated, and you got to sustain it. I'll show you how I did that. I'll tell you how I did it. That'll help you. And then I'll take your questions.
Great. Recovery and rest. You know, I think most of us, you know, are overtrained. I mean, rest, what is that? And recovery, you know, but, you know, having a few days off the gym and we think everything will fall apart. So I guess that, you know, demands a mindset.
I'll tell you, Mike, we use the word mind fuck, because sometimes we take time off and we think we're falling behind.
Yes.
You know, this is not a race. This is not doing the Daytona 500 where you miss a couple of laps, you're out of the race. Sometimes the best thing a bodybuilder can do, a competitive bodybuilder can do, is to take time off. But it's the hardest thing to ask when you want to just go, because you feel like you're falling behind. And I will take you to a place of understanding when we get into the power of recovery and muscle building, because a lot of people don't know what top Olympians do in terms of taking time off, but it's an essential part of getting to the next competition. I'll explain that in great detail. The quality sleep, rest, and stress management for optimal results. Again, a bodybuilder doesn't know what any of that stuff is. Quality sleep. I mean, if I train hard, I sleep great, right? If I eat well, I'm sleeping like a baby. But quality, it's hard to measure when you're on the road. It's hard to measure when you're stressed. It's hard to measure when you're looking at your competitors in a magazine or watching them on YouTube, and you know you got to get in there with these guys that are your idols. So there's a whole lot of things going on with stress management, but I found a way to compartmentalize a lot of that, and I'll share that with you, because again, I was one of the smallest guys on that Olympia stage, but I was beating giants throughout my entire career. So clearly I figured out how to get my rest, my optimum recovery, and also stay motivated. So I'll share that with you in my storytelling aspect of it. Reducing soreness and enhancing recovery. There's a lot of different things on the market right now. They have these electric, muscle stimulators. They have these the massage things, and there's a lot of different techniques out there to manage the muscle soreness. And there's products out there. I'll tell you what I did, because it was pre-digital, right? Like I could go online, I could actually say, give me something for muscle soreness. Back in the day, you couldn't do that. You had to figure it out. The importance of active recovery and rest days. There is a method to the madness. We beat the body up. We tear our minds down. We overeat. We undereat. We just really abuse our bodies to look a certain way for the world. But you have to have that rest and recovery, and you need to figure out where that takes place in the cycle of things and in the scope of things. And then, of course, the post-workout. What do I eat after I train? How am I going to enhance the recovery process? What can I take? All of those things will be answered in the rest of recovery phase on the Q&A session.
Yes. And now the mindset, because I think the mindset go into more or less all of the aspects that we have talked about. You need to have a discipline, to do the right in terms of nutrition, to eat, to sleep. To have control so your body don't run with you. That's what you see from time to time, that you actually, you need to be in control of what you're doing and not the opposite. So I think that is a really important session too. There's a lot into this.
I think that the power of positive thinking, you got to imagine as a bodybuilder, it's an overwhelming scenario that you have to work your way up through the ranks. And then when you get there, all the world's best is waiting for you. It's like Hollywood. You get a little small part in a commercial, and then you get a little part in a movie, and then you get a feature film, and then the next thing you know, you're sitting at the Oscars with, the people that you watched your entire life. And it happens at different phases of life because the spectrum is so different depending on how young you start, how serious you get active about it, once you understand the dynamics of what it is you're trying to do. And then once you're there, what do you do with it? I got there 4 years out of high school in 1987. And then it was, what was I going to do with this gift that I fought for, this pro card? What am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my career? So you've got to be very positive in that way, but you also have to think about, where is it going? How is it building me up? What's the next aspect? And building upon certain successes and coming back from other failures. Power of positive thinking is an area that I will go deep into, because I think it was so gracious that I was able to understand it at such a young age that I'm still here. There's a lot of bodybuilders that are not, because they took advantage of immediate success, and then they got caught up with excesses, and now they're 6 feet underground. It happens. And there's a lot of potholes out there. So you got to get a hold of this positive thinking. I'll tell you how it impacted my career and overcoming the challenges in muscle building. Because again, lifting weights and powerlifting and bodybuilding are diametrically different. The mindset is totally different of what you're trying to accomplish. This is a sport of appearance, and not everyone out there listening is going to be trying to become Mr. Olympia. But when you understand what it is you're doing in the gym, then you'll understand how the world will perceive you based on what you've actually achieved in the gym. We're received differently when we see a certain level of fitness. You look at people differently, you interact with people differently, and looks are very important in the world we live in, unfortunately, because the first thing people see is not your mind, it's your overall appearance.
Yes.
And bodybuilding and lifting weights and training for general fitness, they're all different. So we got to talk about how that difference is, and then also talk about the challenges of overcoming body dysmorphia, which is very big in bodybuilding.
Yeah. I want to pause here because so now we are at mindset and mental resilience. So I just want to share another. So we share this one. So it's So what is it, Shawn? Is it 10 weeks ago since we begin this? And
Wow,
you know, so we are still on a journey with
yes.
this. And thank you so much, all of you who attend tonight, to be a part of this journey. From next week, under each of the course content, you will see a document like this. So this is the one that actually will follow the mindset and mental resilience. Now, this is some of the questions that will be answered. And just to give you a brief, overview about the details that will be gone into. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things we don't know, to be honest. And when we are aware of it, then it's kind of, oh yeah, sure, this is pretty obvious, but we may not think about it. So this is there's a lot of moving parts into this, and I think this will be something that will go into very deep details. So we can go back to the last one here. And then we have session 8, and this will be a recap. And hopefully each of the sessions will have Q&A sessions. So it's really about having engagement and ask questions and see if we can have some good conversations about, what's going on out there and what people are thinking. So
Yeah, here's the thing, is that people have a tendency to reach a certain level of physical fitness, and then they actually don't think that they need anyone's help. I needed help from everyone I competed against. I needed to learn from everyone that was putting the machine of bodybuilding together. I learned about the photographers. I learned about the stage production. I learned about the promoters. I learned about the nutritionists that were out there, the supplement companies that were out there, the Weider publishing machine and the magazines and photos and videos. There's a lot of other aspects that were all encompassing as a bodybuilder that I had to learn behind the scenes, because this is the world I move in. This is the sport that I chose to become an expert in. And I know that everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different journey, but I never at any time in my career thought I knew enough. I learned from every bodybuilder I came in contact with. While I wasn't training like Dorian Yates or eating like Flex Wheeler or posing like Vince Taylor, there was something for me to learn from all of those guys that I could apply to my career. And I apply them today. You take it with you. And so I'm a reflection of all the people I came in contact with, because I learned. I was always a student. And I think that's what the humble aspect of bodybuilding is for the successful bodybuilders. You have to humble yourself enough to learn. And as soon as you think you know everything, someone else is there to take your place.
Exactly. Yeah, you have that mindset. You need to have that mindset. And I think too many are thinking, they know everything, and then obviously they don't know anything at all. So so this is pretty important that you have a growth mindset and really adapt what's out there. And it may not be for you, but you can try it out, and then you can adjust it, and then you can to how it works for you.
100%. Look, I've listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger talk. I've listened to Lee Haney talk. I've listened to Lou Ferrigno talk. They all talk very differently because they come from different backgrounds.
Yes.
But when we look at where they've been and where they went and where they're at, who's going to question the path that they took? So I learned from all of those sources, and I try to share that information with other people. My path is a lot different, yet I'm still on the journey. So being on the journey, the BuildWithPros platforms gives me a place where I can tell you about what's out there. I can tell you what you're going to be experiencing. I can show you kind of what helped me. And so for those that are willing to learn, it may not take you to the Mr. Olympia, but all of the aspects of my bodybuilding career helped me be better than I was.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're trying to do. When we say build with pros, we want to give you a platform to grow. And it may not take you to the Olympia stage, but you'll approach your training different. You'll approach your nutrition different. Your mindset will be different about lifting weights and also working with other people. You cannot be afraid to ask questions, because when you ask questions, you learn and you get answers. Some of it may be applicable, others it might not be, but What you have to understand about the bodybuilding industry is there's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of disbelief. There's a lot of misinformation. So you have to ask yourself, where am I getting my knowledge from? My knowledge is coming from Joe Weider. My knowledge is coming from Arnold. It's coming from my interaction with Dorian Yates, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone, Vince Taylor. These guys were there. Joe and Ben Weider, and now Jake Wood. They laid the foundation. I took notes. So what I'm regurgitating is the stuff that I heard, I learned, I applied, and now I'm going to give it back. That's what Build with Pros is all about.
It is. And just to touch on one thing, I think, you know, the fitness, the whole fitness industry today is really commercial. So it's more or less about to have people to pay for the, you know, the monthly subscription, and hopefully they won't join. I mean, it's completely different as it was back in days. I mean, then you couldn't
100%.
join. Yeah, you couldn't join a gym. You had to, you know, had an instructor to show you stuff. Today you can just walk in, you know, and then, you know, maybe I've seen something on Instagram and you'll do that, and then it's all fine.
Well,
so.
let me tell you, if I'm going to use an analogy, I like to use analogies. If I was going to learn to be a pilot, to fly a plane, and I'm going to one day have you as my passenger, you don't want to hear me tell you that I got my instruction from a guy that never flew a plane, but I signed up for his course and he told me how to fly it because he took some classes in college.
Yeah.
I think it's more important that you learn how to fly a plane from a pilot.
Yeah.
Someone that knows how to fly, someone that's been in the pilot seat, in the cockpit. I've been there. I've done that. I stood on that stage. I've been in all of those gyms. I've traveled the entire world over. What I have to offer is decades of information that I can't take with me. So time costs money. You know, if you're going to get a pilot to fly you, you have to know in your mind that that pilot has studied, has had to pass time, has had to put in so many hours, has had to gas up the plane and all that. You have to pay that pilot to ride in his plane. In our industry, we pay for knowledge. It's an education. And if I'm going to get my knowledge, I got to get it from somebody that I believe knows what the hell they're talking about. I got to get my knowledge from someone that has actually been there and done that. So while time costs money, you got to take that investment and then apply it to yourself so that you make good use of your finance, good use of your time, but also the source of your information is a credible source.
I think we will say thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure for us to have you here, and you know, if you have any questions coming up after this, you know, please reach out to us. You can find us at any time on our website and get in contact with us. And as mentioned, you will in next week get some news about the course, dates, pricing, and so on. So we're looking forward to this.
Right.
All right.
Me, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you so much.